I want to tell you a story about a hero, a young Indiana farm boy who risked his life on a long shot to make the world just a little safer, and no one recognized what he did for 30 years. In the 1880s, cities around the world were ravaged by yellow fever, a deadly, highly infectious disease that killed half its victims, and nobody knew for sure how it was transmitted. Some doctors thought it was passed through dirty clothing, some thought dirty water, still others bad food. One physician in Cuba, named Carlos Finlay, theorized that it was transmitted by mosquito bite. Many disagreed with that, and there was much debate on the matter. So, after the Spanish-American War, a group of doctors stationed at a U.S. base in Cuba, led by U.S. Army Major Walter Reed, began working on Finlay's theory that yellow fever was transmitted by mosquito. At one point, the doctors were discussing how to prove this, and they concluded that the only way they could was if they knew exactly when somebody got infected by a mosquito. Then they could track the progress of the disease and rule out all the other possible vectors for transmission. So this hospital orderly named John Kissinger, that Indiana farm boy, overheard this conversation. Maybe he was sweeping the floor in the next room or emptying bedpans, but he went to bed that night and thought about whether or not he were willing to endure 2 weeks of torture, followed by a 50-50 chance of dying, on the off chance, with no guarantees, that his sacrifice would help Walter Reed and his team gain a little ground in the war against yellow fever. The next morning, he woke up and volunteered. 7 days later, Private Kissinger lay in a hospital bed racked with pain and burning with fever. The inoculation by the yellow fever mosquitoes had taken. In the 8 days of his illness, the doctors learned more by studying Kissinger than they had learned in 8 years of research. Major Walter Reed said of him later, "In my opinion, his exhibition of moral courage has never been surpassed in the annals of the Army of the United States." Reed's research would eventually lead to the eradication of yellow fever, for the most part from this hemisphere, allowing for the completion of the Panama Canal, as well as the collective sigh of relief from a heretofore terrified and uncertain world. The story doesn't end there. Kissinger apparently recovered, so the doctors declared him immune from yellow fever. He continued to work as a hospital orderly, but years later, after an honorable discharge and settling down on an Indiana farm with his wife, Kissinger had a sudden attack where his legs gave way. He had spinal mellitus, brought on by the yellow fever, and he was paralyzed. And it wasn't until 1929, after being basically forgotten by all of medical academia and even the United States government, John Kissinger was nominated for and received the Congressional Gold Medal. The Congressional Gold Medal carries the same prestige as the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but it's far less frequently awarded. It's sometimes referred to as the Civilian Congressional Medal of Honor. Blackwell Auctions is honored to handle this historic piece, as well as Kissinger's Finlay Medal and more items related to his heroic service to our country and to the world.